It's time to go behind enemy lines on a very talented Atlanta Falcons team, a team that is in first place in the NFC South, and a team that the Jets play on Sunday. Let's get into it.
Zoinks! It is unequivocally the Super Bowl for New York Jet fans.
Field Yates, baby. Field Gosh darn Yates. Let's bring him on the show.
Come on, people. Connor Rogers is joining the show. What's up, Connor? But Trevor Gosh darn Sycamore, baby, for me, personally, my favorite New York Jet of all time.
Wow, it's great to be on. What an intro that was right there.
Paul, nobody does an intro like you, man.
Paul, you give the best intro of literally any podcast that I've ever done.
I'm gonna lose my gosh darn bananas.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Paul Eston Jr., a.k.a. Boy Green. I'm the New York Jets digital reporter for Heavy.com. Welcome to Boy Green Daily, a daily New York Jets video show. It's also available wherever you find your audio. Shout out to Heavy on Jets, where we're streaming live right now to 40,000 New York Jet fans. My YouTube channel, youtube.com/BoyGreen25, and as well on Twitter. Without further ado, let's bring on one of the best in the business, a conversation I've been looking forward to for months. Miles freaking Garrett is on the program. Round of applause. Miles, gosh darn Garrett.
Hey, good morning, Paul. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. And Miles, of course, you're the sports reporter and anchor for Fox 5 Atlanta. And we got Jets Falcons on Sunday. And man, the Falcons, the Dirty Birds, first place in the NFC South. If it started today, they'd have a home playoff game. Is that expectations as they were before the season?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, at preseason, this was a division that really was in the Falcons' hands, and I'd say that it still is at this point. Obviously, 5-6 is not what you had in mind at the beginning of the season, but someone's going to have to win this division, and the Falcons' remaining schedule is very winnable. It's very doable. They don't face a team with a winning record for the remainder of this season. But then again, you said the same thing before their 3-game losing stretch when they faced off against the Tennessee Titans, the Arizona Cardinals, the Vikings at that time. So, you don't really know what Falcons team you're going to get each week. So it's kind of a frustrating experience sometimes.
Well, let me ask you, is Desmond Ridder the guy? Because I saw he was the guy, then Taylor Heineke, now back to Ridder. Like, is he the guy the rest of the way? What's happening there in the quarterback room?
Yes, Desmond will be the guy for the remainder of the season. You don't really know what was going on behind closed doors. He was benched during that Tennessee Titans game. At halftime, it was being called a concussion at that time, so you don't know if that's actually what it was. We asked Desmond what it was at that time, and he said he felt fine. So the team said that they saw something. Again, you don't know if that's just smokescreen or if that's just them protecting Desmond or doing their best to do that. But yes, no, it is Desmond's team for the remainder of the season. They said that going into the bye week, they were going to make a decision. They're not going to do flip-flop quarterbacks for the rest of this season. Desmond, he's got to eliminate the turnovers. That's been his Achilles heel all season. He has this weird thing where you see about 4 to 5 plays of brilliance during each game almost. Like you see that flash that this team obviously sees in him, kind of giving him all these chances to really assert himself as the starter. But then he'll have two, mostly, it's not even one. Sometimes it's 2 turnovers where you just scratch your head and you're like, you can't keep doing this. It's just repeat offenses. So, hopefully he starts to eliminate those down the stretch. The Jets defense, though, is no joke. So it could be a tough test for him.
Quarterback musical chairs. That sounds somewhat familiar. Not sure where I've seen that before, but I guess that's neither here nor there. And of course, Sauce has been talking about it up here in New York about, facing his old Bearcat teammate. We got a little bit of that juice in the joint practice during Sauce's rookie season. So he was talking a little bit about that. I think someone brought up that he picked him off in the joint practice. So there's been a little bit of juice there. I heard Desmond on the other side talking down there about Sauce. Is there anything about that relationship? Is there anything there? Are they close? What's the story there, or of anything that you know?
Yeah, I'm honestly not quite sure. And from their personal relationship is concerned, Yeah, I mean, I know that he obviously pays attention to the Bearcats in the NFL. I've heard good things about Desmond, specifically not as much Sauce, obviously, for Falcons reporter, but yeah, no, I remember at the combine we spoke to some Cincinnati guys who were coming out, spoke highly of Desmond. So I would only assume that their relationship is good, just given the success that they had when he was there, when Sauce was there. But yeah, I mean, we've asked, of course, Desmond about Travis Kelce, and
Sure.
great year for the Bearcats, I would say.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. A lot of those products, certainly in the NFL. Again, we're speaking with Miles Gosh darn Garrett here, Fox 5 Atlanta here on Boy Green Daily. Let me ask you, this team on paper is like the craziest Madden team ever, which is, of course, we all think about the Michael Vick 2004 Madden game. I look at this Madden-like roster for the Atlanta Falcons, and you go, Kyle Pitts, Drake London, Bijan Robinson. It's sexy. There is a sex appeal here, Miles, but I'm going to be blunt, and I need to ask about some of these guys. Like Kyle Pitts, is he the unicorn and freak that we all talked about in the pre-draft process, and then they, being the general Falcons, I don't know if there's one person to blame, just doesn't know how to use him, or is he not as good as we thought he was? What's the deal there?
So Kyle is an interesting guy because I think from a national perspective, it isn't really, there's some things behind closed doors that I think the national folks aren't really seeing. Because if you look at his rookie season, when he had consistent quarterback play, when Matt Ryan was still there, he had arguably one of the best tight end seasons for a rookie of all time. Then last year, he gets Marcus Mariota under center and doesn't start off very hot. Then he tears his ACL midway through the season. Pretty bad tear, I'll say that. And I think this season he kind of rushed back a little too quick than he should have. I don't think he's 100% yet. I think he's getting there. But I think he was really adamant about trying to get back week one. There's been so many times where you've seen him get the ball, and when he's getting his yards after catch, which was his specialty coming out of the draft, just his ability to see how fast he had a crazy that's why they called him the unicorn. He had all these crazy intangibles, just his height, his speed, his size. So all that considered, that whole element of his game really hasn't been there this season, just because of, I think, that injury. I think that he's been kind of urging to get back a little bit quicker than he should have. I think this was an injury that probably should have taken a full year of recovery to get by. I mean, you credit him. I mean, trying to get back early than maybe he should, but I think that's kind of what's been holding him back. And, you only see the language that Arthur Smith gives, which is, pretty vague when he speaks to the media about anything, but that's intentional. Arthur Smith is a player's coach. So he doesn't like to, he likes to protect his guys at all costs. So I think that's kind of the main perspective I have on Kyle Pitts.
Did it surprise you? The Falcons take him 4th overall. They took him in front of Jamar Chase out of LSU that year, although that was unique. Obviously, he didn't play that final season. So did that catch you off guard? A tight end? As wonderful and unicornish, I made that up, but as unicornish as he was and is, like, did that catch you off guard when they made that draft pick?
It didn't surprise me. There was a lot of smoke at that time that Kyle was going to be the Falcons pick. So, when there's smoke, there's fire. You kind of assume that he's going to end up being the guy. At that time, I do think that he was probably, they were looking at least for him to be that Julio Jones replacement, because that was right when Julio was on his way out. They still had Matt Ryan. You didn't know how much longer Matt had with the team at that point. So I think at the time he was picked, he was envisioned as that next Julio Jones. There was arguments then to, do you draft Justin Fields? Do you draft a guy like Trey Lance? Apparently there was a lot of smoke that they liked Trey Lance at that point, to maybe sit behind Matt for a little bit. I don't think it was anticipated that Matt was going to be gone as quick as he was. Obviously the Deshaun Watson thing was the reason why he left. But I think Matt, because after speaking with him at the time, I think anticipated being there at least 2 more seasons. I think that was sort of the understanding with Matt. But in regards to Kyle Pitts, I think, yeah, I mean, it's obviously very high for a tight end. It was the highest tight end of all time at that point. It was a very loaded draft class. But at that time, there was a lot of talk that he was going to be the pick. So I wouldn't necessarily call it a surprise.
Man, and you bring up Julio. I still can't believe that draft. If my memory serves correctly, like you guys were like at 27-ish, and you moved all the way up to like whatever it was, because it was 4
6.
or 5. What was it?
6.
6. Yeah,
Mhm.
because I remember my boy AJ Green,
And Patrick
Somerville, go
Peterson.
Green Waves. Yeah, that's right. And so that's wild. So that you guys were able to pull that off to go that far to get that guy, and of course, obviously, he lives up to the billing. One of
And
the
Cleveland didn't
great
really do much
receivers.
with all those picks they got either.
They did not. They did not. Perhaps a cautionary tape warning, a warning shot for all the others. If anyone wants to make a massive leap of that magnitude on draft night, which was stunning at the time, certainly. So there's a lot of fans out there in fantasy football land that have been frustrated with the Kyle Pitts thing because they're like, boy, like where are all the billion touchdowns? I'm sure you guys get all those questions all the time. So when Bijan happened this year, and there was a little bit of a run there where they're like, what in God's green earth is happening there? You used the 8th overall pick on this guy, but Tyler Algier, another personal favorite of mine, BYU guy, that you're using all these other guys in the room. A lot of people assumed you use Bijan with that pick, that kind of investment. He's going to be the guy, and it just doesn't look like that has been the case. Why is that? Is that has that been some source of frustration either from Bijan, or did he have a similar expectation? Like what's happening there? Because I think a lot of people thought he was just going to take the NFL world by storm, and he has in spurts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely won't say it's frustration on Bijan's part. He's captain professional. He will always say, the best things in the locker room. So I don't think Bijan's frustrated. That being said, I do know that they have been making a concerted effort to get him the ball more these last couple of my alarm here. The last couple of weeks here to get him more usage inside the red zone. And you've really seen it, especially against the Saints and the Cardinals. It was just, you saw more of a concerted effort to get him the ball there. Now, why they haven't been doing that previously, you don't really know. It was weird. It was almost after that Vikings game where there was a particular scenario. It was like a 1st and goal from like the 1-yard line. And it was a reverse play to Jonnu Smith. And it was a pass play, a trick play from Jonnu to Michael Pruitt, your 3rd tight end. So it's like, what are you doing? You've got all these playmakers on offense. You've got Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson. Like, why aren't you using these guys? So it was odd coincidence that this all kind of happened after that game. It was almost like they were listening to the fans finally, because there was a lot of frustration there online, kind of talking about, hey, why aren't we using these guys? So as to why they haven't been, I don't really know. I know Drake is more of a product, I think, so far of Desmond and just maybe inconsistent quarterback play, because when Drake's gotten the ball in his hands, he's been very, very good. I think Drake London has been one of the more underrated receivers in the NFL the last couple seasons, especially this year. I think he's really found his footing. And obviously, I said what I said about Kyle Pitts, but Bijan Robinson, you're right. I mean, when the ball's been in his hands, good things have happened. He's obviously had some rookie growing pains. He's had a fumble. He's on some routes. He hasn't been ready for the ball on certain plays, but that's just rookie stuff. It seems like the last couple of weeks are starting to feed him more inside the red zone, and I hope that's a trend that continues in that direction.
All right, let's highlight another one of those stars. You just mentioned him, Drake London. Again, another one of my favorites going to that draft. I thought that's where the Jets were going to go, quite frankly, because I thought the Falcons were probably going to go Garrett Wilson in my made-up prognostications, and then it didn't. I'm like, oh, can he, will he, maybe, okay, Garrett Wilson time, baby. But Drake London, this big-bodied guy, a physical freak, how has he been down there in hot Atlanta? Because obviously Atlanta had their pick of the litter. They could have picked any wide receiver they wanted. They had first dibs.
Yeah, Arthur Smith definitely has a type when it comes to wide receivers, or just people on offense in general, because you've got obviously Kyle Pitts, 6'5". Drake London is huge. Mac Hollins is, I believe, 6'5". You've got Jonnu Smith, 6'4". Cordero Patterson, 6'3". So, he definitely knows what he's looking for in a wide receiver. But no, Drake's been very good. Like, that's the thing. Especially, last year you kind of gave him a mulligan just because of, again, the quarterback play, Marcus Mariota, not necessarily getting his guys the ball as much. You talk about Desmond Ridder not being able to get the ball to some of his guys. Marcus Mariota was worse when it came to that. So the thing with Drake that's been good is he had a good relationship with Desmond early and still does. They were roommates in training camp. They established a good relationship, and Drake kind of became Desmond's go-to guy in that regard. So it was good that they established that connection early in their career. But as far as this year is concerned, there's been so many flashes. I mean, you want to see him have like an 8-catch game more consistently, but when he has had the ball in his hands, good things have happened. He's made so many spectacular catches throughout this season that obviously just haven't really been noticed because of the Falcons. That's just the nature of the game. Obviously, the not as good teams aren't going to get as highlighted. But no, Drake London, to me, especially this season, has looked every bit the first receiver that should have been taken in that draft. Obviously, Garrett Wilson has been Garrett Wilson. I'm not arguing that he, is better than Garrett Wilson or anything. I just think that you've seen so many times this season his ability to show off why he was taken as the first receiver in that draft.
What's your take on Arthur Smith? He's an interesting guy from an outside the room perspective, not covering the team on a daily basis. What is your perspective on Arthur Smith, the head coach of the Falcons?
I actually like Arthur a lot. I think he's an offensive mastermind. Honestly, I think his schemes are very good, and I think that was more evident, or I guess from the perspective of him the last 2 seasons, just because of what he was working with. This team had been hamstrung by cap issues severely the last 2 seasons with, the Matt Ryan contracts, the Julio Jones contracts, some other guys too. This is really the first year that they were able to sign some good players and add them to this roster. And the fact that he was able to squeeze out 7 wins from the last 2 teams was, I think, a very strong testament to his coaching ability. Now, you look at what they've been able to do this year with more talent, and it's been kind of the same results. So, that's been kind of an issue. But if you look closely at some other wins and some losses this season, you can chalk a lot of them up to, decisions and a lot of quarterback play sometimes. That's been something. I think a big one was that Tampa Bay game in down at the Buccaneers Stadium, where obviously the Falcons won. It was a close game, though. It came down to a game-winning field goal. But if you watch that game, the Falcons should have won it 31-14. It was one of those games where if there aren't turnovers from the quarterback, then, it's a very comfortable win. So you see that from the outside perspective. You're like, or if you don't see what's going on, you're like, oh, Falcons dominated a division win today. That's pretty good. And you don't really have that Arthur Smith question for that game. But because it becomes so close like that, you're like, oh, well, Arthur Smith, what's going on there? Now, that being said, I think the Vikings game was more of a testament to Arthur Smith's coaching a little bit. There were just so many questionable decisions that were made there. And then, you look at the Tennessee Titans game. I think that one was a little bit mixture of both. But the Vikings game, I think specifically, was Arthur Smith's quote unquote bad game, where you were like, that was a little concerning. Why aren't you using these guys like you should be? But I do believe in Arthur Smith. I think he's a good coach.
All right, a few more before we get you out of here. Again, Miles Garrett here on the show. I almost forgot to ask this one. Calais Campbell. It's funny. He was supposed to, according to all the reporting, he was supposed to visit the Jets. He's about to hop on the plane. Then, wait, there's a phone call, and apparently he grabs the phone, and Arthur blanks on the phone, and he has I don't know, some sort of brainwashing voodoo magic. He's like, "Don't get on the plane, Sonny. Come here to Atlanta." And all of a sudden, booyah! Calais Campbell never comes to the Jets. The Falcons swipe him away, and I loved Calais. The leadership, the size, obviously, the statistics, all of it. Walter Payton Man of the Year, all of it for Calais Campbell. I don't even know if you can answer the question, but how did that happen? How were the Falcons able to sway him and lure him away? Because there seemed to be, again, as I keep talking about this outside perspective, everyone wanted to join the Aaron Rodgers train. It was the sexy thing, and it was the in vogue thing for everyone just to join the ride, and maybe this could be a magical thing. And he turned all of that down to go to Atlanta. No offense to Atlanta, I've been there. It's a fun time, but it was just a really interesting thing to me.
Yeah, it's the taxes, obviously. No, I'm kidding. But we spoke to Calais a lot about that, and he was, the way he described it is he was firmly convinced that Atlanta was ready to be a contender, and maybe that was the reason why he was interested in the Jets as well. But I think Arthur Blank gave him a very good pitch. Specifically, Arthur Blank is a very involved owner when it comes to Atlanta, and Woody Johnson maybe as well. I'm not very familiar with him or how the Jets are run. But I do know that Arthur Blank is very involved when it comes to the Falcons and is very well respected by players. And because of that, it's usually, it's very hands-on. Like Arthur, I know, called Calais, because again, we talked to Calais about this, and Calais was very adamant that, Arthur gave him a great pitch about how he can be involved in the community like he wants to be involved in the community. Then, of course, Terry Fontenot and Arthur Smith gave their pitch. And oddly enough, he did mention Desmond Ritter as a big reason why he came. He thought Desmond Ritter was ready to really take that next step for the Falcons. Now, he hasn't quite done that yet, but they seem to have made that a very strong part of their pitch to him this offseason. So, Calais has been great. One of the best guys that I've ever covered, especially in that locker room. He's always a voice of reason, always a very positive voice inside that locker room. Even during their losing streak, he's always been that, we're going to be okay. We're going to be fine. While everyone else is kind of, just, I wouldn't say freaking out, but, just is always very, what's the word? Veteran, I guess is the word.
Yeah. He's a steadying presence. Absolutely. Yeah. And but thanks for rubbing it in, Miles. Wow, man. Well, perhaps one of the greatest guys I've ever covered. Oh, thanks, Miles. Really appreciate it, pal. But Miles, actually, I can't go out of this interview without asking you, Miles Garrett. I mean, God delivered. You signed for it, I guess. No role in the acceptance of the speech, but how has that been your entire life, having Miles Garrett? And also Miles Garrett, I know spelled differently, of course, for those who know. Miles Garrett, superstar Browns pass rusher. I mean, how's that been in your life?
Yeah, I mean, I know both of us, we look very similar.
That's why a lot of our fans were mistaken. They were like, wait a second, is this the Cleveland Browns guy? I'm like, flip a coin.
I know it's easy to confuse us both. But no, it's funny because we're both the exact same age. I think he's like 3 months older than me. Wow. It started back when I was in college. I started, my Twitter wasn't anything at that point, but I remember at that point I started getting tweets of like, oh, great game at A&M today, man. I'm like, it's not me, whatever. Then I remember the first time it really took off was obviously draft night, because that's when I was, a senior getting ready to start, going into the professional world. I had sort of a more professional Twitter at that time. So I think I remember getting like 100 followers that night he was drafted, because whatever, people are stupid. But then obviously the Mason Rudolph incident was the night everything really changed, and everyone thought, because at that point I had a blue check mark because I was a news reporter and I had my station handle in my name, so obviously I don't know, people just can't read. That's when I kind of had a little fun with it and posted it, and obviously, I guess went mini viral, you could say. But every time he has a good game, I'll get 2 or 3 tweets still. It's something that'll always have. He actually sent me a signed jersey, which was funny. But
wait, what?
Oh yeah, no, he sent me a signed jersey a couple of years ago after that whole incident. So
that's amazing.
It's nice of him.
Oh, wow. Okay, so maybe that answers it for me, but is it was it initially kind of quirky, funny, now it's annoying, hey man, read the bio, for God's sakes, what's going on? But now with Miles Garrett and the whole story, you're just accepting it as a future funny thing that will just always probably be a thing for some people. We got billions of people on the planet. Maybe it'll continue to happen the rest of your life.
Yeah, no, I mean, it doesn't bug me, I would say. Okay. I mean, it's kind of annoying, maybe when you look up your name online, it's you have to go through 20 pages to find something about what you're looking for. But no, I mean, I don't have an issue with it. That's the nature of it. He's one of the best players in the NFL, generational, and, really happy for him. I think it's kind of cool. I share a name with a really good football player. So I think it's just something I'm going to have to deal with the rest of my life.
Well, we have one of the great sports reporters, anchors, generational. Some people have called you, Miles. I didn't say it, but I know some people have said it. Yeah, that's right. Amazing. So let's end with this. Jets-Falcons prediction. This is a weird game for both teams. I mean, like I said, it's fun on paper with a lot of big names, but obviously the Jets have been slumping. The 4-game losing streak. Falcons are under 500, but they're in first place. There's just a lot happening here, Miles. So what the hell? Crystal ball it for me. What the hell's going to happen on Sunday?
I think we're in store for a very, very low-scoring game. With the way the Jets defense plays, the way that The Falcons offense has been very inconsistent. The Jets defense scares me. And I know that Desmond has just had a lot of issues with turnovers that he hasn't really been able to fix. The silver lining, at least from that I think will be from the Falcons' perspective, is their running game. They've got a very good running game, obviously, and I know the Jets defense has given up, I think, around 130 points or 130 yards per game when it comes to the rushing attack. So I think Atlanta will lean heavily on that. But of course, the Jets defense is the Jets defense. They can't be overlooked. So in that regard, I think the Falcons will maybe have the advantage just a hair, because I haven't seen anything from the Jets offense to really show me that they can score enough. Now, again, I'm not saying the Falcons offense is any better or that much better, but I think they've got some playmakers to kind of rely on to where you don't have to rely on the quarterback. Whereas I think the Jets need to get, Tim Boyle to get the ball to Garrett Wilson or distribute to Breece Hall. They have a lot of offensive line issues that I've seen. The Falcons have a pretty good offensive line. They're starting to figure some stuff out with Chris Lindstrom, Jake Matthews, Caleb McGarry. There's been some guys that have been able to figure things out and getting better in the pass protection. And obviously they're very good run blockers. So because of that, I will say, I think we're looking at like a 16-10 Falcons win, something like that.
All right, that's better than the 6-4, 6-3 score. I thought we were going there. For God's sakes, I hope not. But hopefully we get some sort of offensive spark. But it just hasn't been there. So that is as accurate as a prediction as I could imagine. Miles, thanks for joining us. We set this up, I know, a bunch of months ago in the off season. So a lot of fun. And hope you enjoyed the game on Sunday.
Absolutely. You too, Paul. Take care.
All right, there he is, Miles Garrett. We'll be back tomorrow morning on the show, everybody. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you.